Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session on the attachment theory or attachment styles and what we can do also in cases of stress, anxiety, and depression. My name is Darya Haitoglou. I'm a psychologist and director of Virginia Satir Institute in the UK, London, and also founder of Enrich Global, an organization that helps promote healthy relationships, also raise self-esteem. We conduct workshops, retreats around the world. And a lot of the issues that come with relationships can be rooted, can be found in the attachment theory. Now, let me share a slide that can help you picture what I'm talking about. And probably you've heard some information. Hopefully you can see the slide here is about different attachment styles. Maybe you've heard the names, secure or anxious or avoidant. Now, where does this all come from? There was a psychologist, actually psychoanalyst in Great Britain, John Bowlby, and he created the origins of the attachment theory. Together with Mary Ainsworth, they conducted fascinating research. At that time, we call it strange situation experiment. That's the name. I don't know if you've heard of it, but what they did, first of all, John himself, why he did what he did. He comes from a very upper class British family, and he started studying medicine, but when he was little, he rarely saw his parents. Actually, at the age of 7, he was sent to a boarding school. And later he wrote that he wouldn't even send a dog to a boarding school at the age of 7. He was very upset. He hated it. And he had a lot of memories, but also bitterness towards his parents in relation to that upbringing methods. But that was kind of a go-to method for the upper class Britain and British families to send their children to boarding schools. And upbringing was all about discipline. Children were supposed to be appearing and behaving properly, and they were punished brutally when they were not behaving that way. So that comes at a price. But in the case of John Bowlby, he actually started studying medicine and then psychoanalytic approach, and he started writing. He also worked for the World Health Organization in the 50s, and he was asked to produce a report on the situation of many homeless and orphan children in the post-war era. And the report that he published, he actually managed to sell 500,000 copies as a book. In English alone, it was translated in 10 more languages. But that's how he became famous. And it was a popular version of the book called Maternal Care and Mental Health. That's how it started. It was more like a monograph where Bowlby described the adverse impact that arises when children grow up without their mothers in institutions where their emotional and cognitive needs are not insufficiently, are not met, are not satisfied. And especially when there is a physical disconnection, when mothers don't touch children or don't hug them, the result was quite fascinating that so many people in clinics and also orphanages started looking into the consequences of this kind of upbringing style. His theory, which he had been developing since the 1940s, deviated from the psychoanalysis that was being developed at that time, and just one central point, whereas psychoanalysis primarily regarded the subconscious, the death instinct and the sexual instinct and their integration constrained by external factors as groundbreaking and the cause of development, for Bowlby, real life experiences are the central source influencing an infant's behavior. So in one of his famous statements, he says that whenever he, meaning the infant, feels tired, sick, insecure, or alone, he exhibits attachment behavior such as screaming, smiling, clinging, and following in order to restore the proximity of a familiar person. Now, going back to that strange situation experiment, what Bowlby and Mary Anworth did, let me just hopefully share this picture, which I found quite interesting to show you. Where can I show it? Where Mary Anworth inviting families, mainly mothers, with their children, and they spend some time in a room together, and a strange person, let's say a person who a child doesn't know, comes to the same room. They sit, they talk with their mother, and then the mother leaves the room, leaving the child with that strange person. So what they observed was the behavior of a child was very different depending on what kind of relationship this child had with the mother originally. For example, children with secure attachment styles, they were showing unhappiness when their mother left. Definitely they cried, they showed their emotions, their feelings, but they once the mother came back to the room, she managed to soothe the child, and quite quickly they were fine again. So they protested to stay with a unfamiliar person, but once the mother came back, they were fine. Then there were different kind of reaction of different children. For example, some did not react to their mother leaving. They didn't cry, they didn't look at the stranger, they just continued playing. And when the mother came, they also kind of ignored her almost. Or other children, they were very upset when the mother left. And when the mother came back, they were still very upset. She almost couldn't soothe the child for quite a long period of time. Now, what John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth realized that, and it actually changed a lot of psychotherapy and theories recently that incorporate the attachment theory into the research, especially the emotion-focused therapy that is quite evidence-based and recently researched by Dr. Sue Johnson, that how children learn or learned with their family, with their primary and family of origin caregivers, they take those communication styles or attachment styles and they keep them almost for the whole life. And then comes their relationship with their partner, for example, with a romantic partner or with a business partner or with some sort of a partner in a project. And many times, very often, the same patterns repeat themselves. Now, in systemic psychology, in the Satir approach, for example, Virginia Satir looked at communication stances, a blamer or a placator, super reasonable or irrelevant. Now, these can also correspond to these attachment styles. For example, an avoidant attachment style, let me share this picture again, hopefully you can see. Here we go. That shows secure, anxious, avoidant, and then fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidance. So on the horizontal line, you have thoughts about the self. On the vertical line, you have thoughts about partner. You see the 4 different quadrants: negative, positive, positive, negative. So for example, secure attachment style is very much positive thought about myself and positive thought about the other. I have healthy boundaries, I can face the challenges, I have mutual trust and support and respect, and I have pretty much controlled conflict resolution. It's very easy for a secure attachment style kind of person to mitigate and resolve conflicts. Now, if you look at the anxious attachment style, then there's this negative thought about the self versus a very positive thought about the partner. It's almost like they put the partner on a pedestal, like the codependence becomes such a prevalent, such an important part of life, and that person almost cannot survive without somebody who can regulate and soothe and provide solutions for them. There's a lot of fear of abandonment, need for constant validation, and dependency on the partner for self-worth. And that's what, if we track back, that child probably felt so anxious when their mother left or it was not available, and tried to please, try to do something to get her attention. Now, dismissive avoidant style has a negative attitude towards the partner, but very positive about the self, meaning that I can hold myself and think of myself as great, as I'm very solid, but I judge and disrespect or criticize the partner. So that kind of a style of attachment person would avoid intimacy and vulnerability at all cost. They would have commitment issues. They might have plan B and plan C in their pockets. When they date somebody, they might date another person. They're guarded and closed off in their heart. And when we look at this kind of attachment, if we go back to the childhood experience, this would be often when the mother was, or the father were not available, but also they were not even able to soothe the child, and the child learned to rely on themselves and disconnected from the caregiver, so that they could not find any refuge. They could not have any hope in the trust or in the support of the other. And the fearful avoidant or disorganized is the negative thought about the self and the negative thought about the partner. This is a very complex attachment style when there's a lot of fear of rejection. There's a hard time trusting and relying on the partner, and very low self-esteem. It can be coming from a childhood experience where the reaction of parents or the mother was so unpredictable. Maybe she suffered from mental health issue. Maybe there was effect of alcohol or drug abuse, and it often comes with a traumatic baggage. Now, I would like to share a few cases so this can become a little bit more sort of obvious. So I've got 4 cases. Case 1 about secure attachment. Anna, she's 28 years old, our marketing manager. Anna grew up in a stable, loving family environment. Her parents consistently responded to her needs and provided a sense of security. As a result, Anna developed a secure attachment style. Now, in relationships, Anna has a strong sense of self-worth and is comfortable with both closeness and independence in her relationships. She communicates openly with her partner and feels confident in expressing her needs and emotions. She's also understanding and supportive of her partner's needs. Now, as someone with a secure attachment style, Anna does not require significant intervention to maintain healthy relationships. However, she may benefit from learning about other attachment styles to better understand and support her partner, friends, or family members who may exhibit different attachment patterns. Now, case 2 about anxious attachment is a case of Brian, who's 34, is a software developer. Brian's childhood was marked by an inconsistent parental presence. His mother was often preoccupied with her own emotional struggles, resulting in unpredictable and inconsistent responses to Brian's needs. This led to the development of an anxious attachment style. In relationships, Brian tends to become overly preoccupied with his partner's feelings and actions, constantly seeking reassurance and validation. He may become overly clingy or possessive, fearing rejection or abandonment. This can lead to relationship strain and difficulties maintaining healthy boundaries. Brian would benefit from therapy, specifically focusing on building self-esteem, emotional regulation, and healthy communication skills. A therapist trained in attachment theory can help Brian develop strategies to manage his anxiety and create healthier relationship patterns. Now, a third case is of Claire, who's 42 and she's an architect. And it's a case of an avoidant attachment. Claire's parents were emotionally distant and unresponsive to her needs, which resulted in an avoidant attachment style. She learned early on to rely on herself and suppress her emotions. In relationships, Claire struggles with emotional intimacy and often keeps her partner at arm's length. She values her independence above all and may have difficulty expressing her emotions or allowing herself to be vulnerable. This can result in her partner feeling disconnected or unimportant. Claire would benefit from therapy focused on exploring her emotions and understanding the root causes of her avoidance. Developing emotional awareness, communication skills, and strategies for building emotional intimacy can help Claire create more fulfilling relationships. And case 4 is David's case, who's 25 and a college student. David experienced significant trauma in his childhood, including abuse and neglect from his parents. This chaotic upbringing led to the development of a disorganized attachment style. In relationships, David's attachment style is characterized by unpredictable and inconsistent behavior. He may simultaneously desire closeness and distance in his relationships, leading to confusion and instability. He often struggles with trust, self-worth, and emotional regulation, making it difficult for him to maintain healthy long-term relationships. David would likely benefit from trauma-informed therapy that addresses the root causes of his disorganized attachment style. This may include therapies such as eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR, it's called, or cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. By working with a therapist, David can develop skills to improve his emotional regulation, self-worth, and relationship patterns. Now, okay, so these are just examples. Now, what could, of course, we started talking about Satir as well. I didn't finish that piece. So in Virginia's communication stances, if you think of this attachment styles like an anxious one, it can be manifested in a blaming behavior, blaming communication, or a placating behavior, which is a placator stance in Satir words, Satir terms. Or, for example, an avoidant attachment style could be an irrelevant stance, communication stance, or a withdrawing stance. where a person would not speak about important issues and try to avoid a conflict, avoid a challenging situation or confrontation. And disorganized can appear in all sorts of things, in different dances, in different combination of this. It could be super reasonable, also could be avoidant. Disorganized could be blaming into placate, or placate turning into withdrawer, a super reasonable turning into blamer and then withdrawer. All these different variations, we see them, and it's important for the brain to know about the styles, to know about this attachment and coping communication styles, because when we name it, we tame it. Once we know it, we can actually recognize it. Even for the secure attachment style, sometimes this miscommunication or lack of understanding can turn the relationship into a breakup or a divorce. And we often see this as mismatching styles. Often an anxious style person attracts an avoidance style person, and that's when the conflict begins. And the difficult bit is when one needs the reassurance and validation and becomes super clingy, and the other one disconnects and moves away, retreats and runs away, because they need space, because they need that sense of independency and cave time, because both of them suffer from the lack of trust, a lack of that stability, that presence, or a motherly or caregiver presence that would satisfy their needs. And one learns how to overcompensate and try to play a game of either demanding to satisfy the needs, or shutting down and running away, and maybe not engaging emotionally, being not available emotionally, not available. A lot of women actually complain about their partners, especially males, that are not emotionally available. Why? Because men in previous generations were raised by women that were not emotionally available, or they're raised by men who are very punitive, who are very harsh, who didn't support emotional release or emotional expression. Boys never cry, or children should not be heard, should only be seen. I mean, all these kind of messages, they go deep, and they can be tracked down through generations. What happens with the beating, with abuse, with the disrespect, with all the dysfunctionalities in the families, right, in societies, we all suffer from them at some point. Now the question is, how can we A, recognize it, B, heal it and repair it? Our nervous system, the good news is that it is plastic. Our brain has neuroplasticity. Our nervous system is just ready to be healed, is always available, even at a later stage. We have participants in the 80s and the 90s coming to our retreats and workshops, and it's amazing how beautiful the inner work, the self-work, how powerful it is when the person takes control and takes that as their responsibility to change the way how they react, how they respond to the other person when their needs are not met. So it is possible to shift and change, to repattern. That approach, that style can change, and to be more or secure, towards secure. It's a spectrum, so we can shift. Just a small little shift on that spectrum can help create more resilience, more flexibility. And flexibility, psychological flexibility, is one of the characteristics that Charles Darwin said, the survival of the fittest. It's not the physical fitness anymore, it's psychological fitness, it's emotional agility, emotional flexibility, emotional stability, in a sense as intelligence, emotional intelligence. And all of that comes from that interesting discovery of the British psychologist and reiteration also by Virginia Satir in the communication styles. But now that we know with the polyvagal theory, now that we know with the neuroscience, how the stress level increases, our anxiety and depression goes on a spectrum, and anxiety creates anxiety, anxious style of communication or attachment, and depression is avoidant. So these two spectrums are still there. How do we heal? How do we treat this? Is by learning that it's not something personal. Nobody's attacking me personally. My partner may be suffering from their own trauma. So seeing them in their own attachment style can help me process the fact that, okay, if they have this avoidance style, maybe they're not available for me, not because I've done something wrong, or not because they don't love me, but because they're suffering, they're engaged in something very stressful. So how can I include that into my consideration and change the point of view, point of reference, point of meaning making, and how I respond to that behavior or comment or lack of comment or behavior, right? It's often a lack that is the avoidance, that we call it now ghosting, or when the person disappears, when the person goes into their cave, when they feel attacked, or they feel judged, or when they feel criticized. And often anxious attachment style person would go after the avoidant attachment style person, just because that's how they know to get their needs met. And for the avoidant style attachment person, they can see that neediness, that cleanliness, that desire to connect as not as breaking into, through my boundaries and somebody attacking me. It's just that they are in distress. They are triggered by their childhood trauma, childhood disorganized, or maybe an anxious mother upbringing style, and they are trying to soothe themselves. The only thing they need is somebody to hold them, to hug them, to give them validation that I'm here for you, don't worry. Sometimes words, sometimes action, sometimes hugs, touch, sometimes a gift goes a long mile, goes a long way. And for the anxious attachment style person, knowing that the avoidance style attachment person need their space, need their time, and sometimes it is a longer time than we think they need. So appreciating that and knowing that we're all different, but we're all the same in that sense. So finding, for example, a group of people who are similar, like anxious, friends who are very similar, and say, oh, don't worry, I do the same, or, yeah, I worry about that too. Can also shed some light and to understand it's not just me behaving like that, but many people do. The same for each style. And of course, the ideal situation, the ideal style is secure, or in Virginia Satir term, it is leveling communication style. It is an ideal. We always want to reach that level of facing the reality, but non-confrontational, non-judgmental, this benevolent, beautiful, loving presence. And it is a journey. So maybe we cannot do full spectrum, full kind of pendulum to the secure. But as soon as we do our journey and learn how to walk towards that secure style of attachment, that's all that matters. And the final picture I wanted to show you is a set of books that you can read that can help you on this journey. So there are many books you can read about the different attachment styles. Of course, you can find John Bowlby's A Secure Base. It's a classic book, Parent-Child Attachment and Healthy Human Development. Or there's an interesting Overcoming Insecure Attachment by Tracy Crossley. 8 proven steps to recognizing anxious and avoidant attachment styles and building healthier, happier relationships. Securely Attached, How Understanding Childhood Trauma Will Transform Your Parenting by Mike and Kirsten Berry. Attached, The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. And the Attachment Theory Workbook, Powerful Tools to Promote Understanding, Increase Stability, and Build Lasting Relationships by Annie Chan. And there are many more, but this is just to whet your appetite and get you interested and curious about this attachment theory, attachment styles, and hopefully it can help you also reflect upon your communication and maybe your partner, if you have one, or as you're looking for a partner. Also, look at the partner communication style, maybe offer them an understanding of your own, where are you coming from? What are your patterns? What are your habits? What are your difficult bits? Because a lot of the time, the relationship is very nice at the beginning, but then the challenges, the bumps come on the road. And relationships, they need that platform to be able to repair. Reparation happens when we understand and when we soothe, we find our balm, we find our soothing agent, and we should be able to do that for ourselves also without asking our partner to do that. So as soon as we can do it for ourselves, then we become much healthier in a partnership together with a partner, so we can then help them. But first, help ourselves. So that's in brief what I wanted to share with you. Hopefully that was helpful. I look forward to hearing from you and stay in touch.